The sun burned the sky like a giant fire above the dry plains. Heat waves moved across the ground, making everything shake and blur. Sand rose with every small wind, turning the world into a yellow storm. In this endless heat walked a human stranger named Rain. His clothes were torn, his water was gone, and his boots were covered with dust. He had walked for hours under the burning sun, searching for any sign of life. His throat was dry, and his skin felt like it was melting, but he did not stop, because stopping in this place meant dying. As he climbed a small hill of cracked stone, he finally saw movement in the distance. At first, he thought it was a mirage, another trick of heat and light. But then he saw the shape clearly: a large alien warrior kneeling beside a herd of tall, long-necked animals. Their silver fur glowed in the sun, and their horns shimmered like metal. Rain watched from far away, trying to understand the scene. The alien warrior looked powerful, with armor made of dark plates and sharp edges. She had 4 arms, each strong enough to break stone, and her skin was a deep shade of blue, but she was wounded, and one of her arms trembled as she tried to stand. Her name was Kara, though Rain did not know that yet. He only saw that she was hurt, and her herd was restless. The animals circled her, protecting her as she protected them. Near her feet was a small bowl filled with clear water, the only clean water he had seen on this whole desert path. Rain walked forward slowly, his hands raised to show peace. He knew approaching a warrior like her could be dangerous, but the heat was killing him, and he could not turn away. Still, he moved with respect, every step careful and calm. Kara lifted her head when she heard his footsteps. Her eyes narrowed like blades. Sharp and full of warning, she did not speak, but her stance said everything. One more step, and she would strike. Rain stopped a safe distance away and nodded to her. "I am not here to harm you," he said in a tired but steady voice. Kara finally spoke, her voice deep like thunder. "No outsider comes near the herd without reason." Rain pointed toward the bowl of water, but he did not move closer. "I only ask for a drink," he said. The warrior growled, making the herd tense and shift. "This water belongs only to the warriors of my clan," she said. Rain understood, but his body was weak and shaking. Still, he did not beg or step forward. He simply stood there, waiting, breathing slowly. The silence grew heavy, like another layer of heat pressing on both of them. Kara watched him with confusion and suspicion. Humans, in her belief, were fragile creatures who cried for help too easily. But this human did not. He waited with calm eyes. Even though he looked close to collapse, finally she spoke. "Why do you think I would share sacred water with you?" Rain gave a small, tired smile. "I don't," he said, "but I can still offer it to you." He lifted his canteen, empty and scratched, and placed it gently on a rock near her. Kara stared at him, unsure what trick he was playing. He was offering her water when she had denied him water. It made no sense to her warrior mind. Her people believed humans only acted for advantage, never for honor. Rain pointed at the bowl again. "If you do not trust me, then suit yourself," he said softly. Then he did the last thing Kara expected. He stepped forward, lifted the sacred bowl with careful hands, and drank the water meant only for her kind. Kara froze, stunned completely. No outsider had ever touched the herd's water. To her people, the water was a test, a symbol, a sacred bond. Any outsider who drank it was expected to die or suffer greatly. But Rain did not fall. He did not choke. He did not show pain. He simply lowered the bowl and breathed out slowly. For the first time, Kara felt fear not of him, but of what he might be. The wind whistled across the burning plains, carrying silence between them. And in that silence, something new began. a strange, fragile thread of respect. Kara stared at Rain as if she were seeing a ghost on the burning plains. The sacred water bowl was still in his hands, and the last drops were sliding down its edge. He breathed slowly, calmly, with no sign of pain or sickness. This should not have been possible for generations. Only her people could drink the herd's water without falling into madness or death. It was a rule written into their blood, a test of spirit and strength. But this thin, sunburned human had taken a full drink and stood there as if nothing strange had happened. Kara felt the first tremor of doubt she had experienced in many years. Rain carefully set the bowl back on the ground. He did not speak, did not brag, did not challenge her. He simply looked at the herd, the landscape, and the sky, as if drinking sacred water was a normal act. The herd animals stepped closer to him, sniffing curiously. Their silver fur glowed softly in the sunlight. Kara saw one of them brush its horn against Rain's arm. She felt her throat tighten. The herd only touched those they trusted. Rain stepped back respectfully, his hands raised to show peace. He still said nothing. And that silence made Kara uneasy. Humans often talk too much, too fast, too loudly. But this human waited, watched, and acted without fear. "Tell me your secret," Kara finally said, her voice low like distant thunder. "There is no secret," Rain answered. "You drank the water of my ancestors," she said. "No outsider could survive it." Rain shrugged lightly. "I survived," he said. That simple answer felt like a blade sliding across Kara's mind. She tightened all four fists, unsure if she should be angry or impressed. "But why?" she asked. "Why risk your life for water that was not yours?" Rain looked at her with steady eyes. "You needed it more than I did," he said. The words hit her harder than any weapon. No outsider had ever spoken like that. Outsiders wanted profit, safety, or power. Not this strange, simple kindness. The wind carried a soft sound across the plains' low rumbling. Like distant drums, Kara turned her head quickly, her warrior senses sharpening. Rain also looked toward the horizon. He seemed to sense danger even before she spoke. "Hunters," Kara growled. Dust clouds rose far away. Shaped by fast-moving machines, they were coming closer. Following the tracks of the herd, her injured arm pulsed with pain, reminding her she was not ready for another fight. Rain stepped beside her, watching the dust trails. "How many?" he asked calmly. "Too many for one warrior," she said. "Then it is good that you are not alone," he replied. Kara stared at him again. This human did not show fear, not of death, not of her, not of sacred rules. Something about him felt old, heavy, deeper than a simple traveler. It unsettled her, yet she could not look away. "You do not know our enemies," she said. "You do not know me," Rain replied softly. He said it not as a threat, but as truth. She felt her chest tighten once again. This human was becoming more confusing by the minute. She studied him carefully. His shoulders were straight, even though his body was tired. His eyes scanned the land like a trained fighter. His mind seemed sharp, despite the heat. Kara began to wonder what kind of life shaped him into this. Rain knelt beside the herd's wounded animal. Checking its leg, he moved with gentle hands. Almost like a healer, the creature relaxed, lowering its head to him. This made no sense to Kara. Animals respected instinct, not words. They trusted only strength and spirit. Kara approached him, her shadow falling over his back. "If you stay with me, you will die," she warned. Rain looked up with a curious smile. "I almost died before I found you," he said. "So staying with you seems like an improvement." Kara blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Not with fear, not with pride, but with simple truth. She looked at the approaching hunters again. Their machines grew larger as they came closer. The sound of engines cut through the desert air like metal claws. The herd began to grow restless and afraid. She knew she could not defend them alone. Her wound slowed her. Her strength was slipping. The hunters would slaughter her people's sacred animals, unless she accepted help from this impossible human. Kara took a long breath and stepped closer to Rain. "Human," she said, "fight with me." Rain stood, brushing dust from his knees. "I already planned to," he answered. For the first time in a long while, Kara felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not pride, but the beginning of trust. And as the hunters closed in, she understood one thing clearly. This human was not what he seemed, and whatever he truly was, she needed him now more than ever. The rumbling grew louder across the burning plains. It was no longer a distant sound, but a living threat rising from the horizon. Dust clouds rolled closer like storm waves, shaking the ground with every passing second. Kara tightened her grip on her spear, and Rain rested his hand on the small blade she had given him. They stood side by side as the herd pressed together nervously. The silver-furred creatures stomped the ground, their horns glowing with fear. Kara whispered a calming sound in her native tongue. But even her voice could not settle them now. The hunters' machines came into view, sleek metal vehicles with wide wheels and heavy plates. Black banners with bone symbols flapped on their sides. These hunters were not simple thieves, but trained killers. Their goal was not only capturing the herd, but destroying anyone who stood in their way. Rain watched silently, studying each machine. He noted how their engines rattled, how their formation shifted. He counted the hunters one by one. Kara noticed his sharp attention, and a small question formed in her mind. How did this human learn to analyze danger like a seasoned warrior? 3 machines split off from the group and circled wide. "They are surrounding us," Rain said plainly. Kara nodded, though she already knew. Still, his calm voice steadied her, which surprised her deeply. The machines screeched to a halt, and their doors opened with metallic hisses. 5 hunters stepped out, tall and armored, each carrying jagged weapons made for tearing flesh. Their masks were shaped like skulls, and their eyes glowed red through the visor. One of them pointed at Kara with a vicious grin beneath the mask. "Warrior of the herd," the hunter leader shouted. "Your time has ended," Kara growled, but pain shot through her injured arm. She clenched her teeth to hide the weakness. Rain noticed, but he did not speak. He simply stepped half a pace forward, placing himself between her and the approaching danger. The lead hunter tilted his head at Rain, confused. "And what is this thing?" He laughed. A human stray. Rain's expression did not change. His eyes stayed focused. Kara expected him to show fear, but he stood as solid as stone. The hunter leader raised his weapon. "Move aside, human, or die quickly," Rain replied with a quiet voice that somehow carried across the hot air. "No." The hunters laughed sharply, their laughter echoing in the plains like broken glass. Then the leader lunged, his blade swinging toward Rain's chest. Kara shouted a warning, but Rain was already moving. His body shifted with surprising speed, slipping past the blade like wind sliding around stone. He struck the hunter's wrist with the small warrior blade she had given him. The weapon fell, clattering on the ground. The hunter roared in pain and stumbled back. Kara stared, shocked again by the human's reflexes. "You fight like you have seen war," she said under her breath. "Maybe I have," Rain replied calmly, not taking his eyes off the hunters. The remaining hunters advanced quickly, 4 against 2. Their boots pounded the soil as they spread out to flank the pair. Kara stepped forward, forcing her injured arm to hold her spear steady. She would not let them take her herd without a fight. The first hunter charged her, roaring with a broken metal voice. Kara swung her spear in a wide arc, hitting him in the chest and knocking him backward. Pain flared through her wound, but she kept attacking. Another hunter moved toward her blind side, raising his blade for a killing strike. Rain reacted first. He threw himself between them, blocking the blow with his forearm. Blood streamed down his skin, but he did not fall. He grabbed the hunter's arm and twisted until the bone cracked. Kara stared again. This human fought with a strange mix of discipline and wild instinct, as if he carried a forgotten strength inside him. Her people spoke of warriors born with old spirits. Rain felt like one of them. Though he was from a distant world, the hunters regrouped. Stepping back to reconsider their attack, they had expected an easy kill. But now they watched the human differently, with caution and something close to fear. The leader hissed, "You should not be alive after blocking that strike." Rain wiped the blood from his arm with the back of his hand. "Suit yourself," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but his eyes held fire. Kara felt something shift inside her for the first time. She believed they might actually survive this encounter. But the hunters were not defeated yet from the remaining machines. More doors opened, more hunters stepped out, armored and armed, at least a dozen more. Spreading across the plains like shadows, Kara swallowed hard as the air thickened with danger. Rain lifted the small blade again and narrowed his eyes. The real battle was only beginning. The new wave of hunters spread out, forming a deadly ring around Rain. Kara and the trembling silver herd, dust rose again as their heavy boots marched across the cracked soil. The air grew tight, almost too thick to breathe. Even the sun seemed to pause, watching the battlefield with a burning stare. Kara spun her spear once, steadying her stance. Pain pulsed through her wounded arm, but she ignored it. She could not show weakness now. Not in front of the hunters, and not in front of the human who had already bled for her. Rain adjusted the small blade in his hand. It was a simple weapon, too small for a real warrior. But somehow it looked natural in his grip, as if he had held far worse weapons in his past. The hunter leader pointed his jagged sword at them. "Take the herd," he ordered. "Kill the warrior and the human." A storm of footsteps answered him. Hunters charged forward with a wild roar that shook the plains. The first attacker reached Kara, swinging high. She ducked under the strike and drove her spear upward. The blade struck the hunter's chest, knocking him off his feet. Dust exploded around them as he hit the ground. Another hunter tried to flank her, but Rain was already there. He moved like a shadow, fast and silent. He struck the hunter's knee, then his throat. The armored giant collapsed in the dirt, gasping for breath. Kara saw this and felt a strange pull in her chest. The human did not hesitate. Did not fear, did not break, for someone so quiet. He fought like a man who had survived endless battles. Two hunters at once rushed Rain from opposite sides. Their blades flashed in the burning sun. Rain twisted between them with a fluid motion. One blade cut only the air where he had been a heartbeat earlier. The second blade met his forearm, but he did not slow down. He grabbed the attacker's armor and slammed him into the other. Both fell in a tangled heap, stunned. Kara let out a deep roar and spun her spear. She leaped into a group of hunters, forcing them back with wide, sweeping strikes. She looked like a storm of blue armor and sharp steel. Rain fought beside her, small compared to her towering form. Yet he filled every gap in her defense. Every time a hunter tried to flank her, Rain was already there. It was as if they had trained together for years, a perfect, impossible rhythm. Warrior and human moving like two parts of the same blade. But the hunters did not stop. They were many. And more kept coming from the machines. The ground shook with their march. Their shouts and weapons echoed across the plains like thunder. One hunter managed to get behind Kara. He raised his heavy axe. Ready to strike her exposed back, Rain saw it first. He sprinted across the dust and threw himself into the path of the blow. The axe hit him hard, knocking him to the ground. Kara spun around in shock. Her heart pounded as she saw Rain push himself back up. Blood dripped down his shoulder, but he kept standing. Humans were not supposed to endure wounds like that. Not without screaming, collapsing, or losing will. But Rain stood as if pain were only another part of the battle. His eyes sharpened with something fierce and ancient. Kara felt fear not of him, but for him. No warrior had ever fought so hard beside her. No outsider had ever bled for her people. She roared and threw her spear with all her strength. The weapon flew across the battlefield and struck the axe-wielding hunter in the chest. He fell backward, stunned by the force. Rain stepped to her side again, breathing hard but still steady. "You are hurt," Kara said, her voice thick with worry. "I am alive," he answered simply. Alive is enough. The hunters gathered again, forming a tighter circle. They realized brute force alone would not defeat the strange pair. The leader shouted new orders. "Break the herd's formation," he yelled. "Scatter them." Kara's eyes widened in alarm. If the herd panicked and ran, they would be hunted down one by one. She could not protect them across open plains. And she feared her strength was running thin. Rain saw the panic flicker in her eyes. He stepped in front of her once more. "Trust me," he said. Kara hesitated only a moment, then nodded. Rain raised his blade and charged toward the hunters alone. His shout cut through the air like a crack of lightning. The dust around him swirled as he sprinted forward. An impossible courage burned in him. The hunters braced for impact. But Rain did not attack them directly. Instead, he struck the ground near their feet. Sending up a cloud of dust, the sudden blindness slowed them. Kara understood instantly. He was creating chaos not for victory, but for control. Rain moved through the dust cloud like a ghost. Every strike was precise, every step efficient. Hunters stumbled. Confused by their own blindness, Kara roared and joined the attack. Together, they pushed the hunters back. The herd behind them calmed, staying close. When the dust finally settled, half the hunters were down. The others retreated a few steps. Shaken by the sudden shift in battle, Kara breathed heavily. Her armor cracked, her spear stained. Rain stood beside her, blood dripping but eyes steady. They had survived the first wave. But the hunters were not defeated yet, and in the rising silence, Kara whispered one truth to herself. This human was no ordinary being. He was something far more dangerous and far more important. The battlefield settled under a heavy silence. The dust hung in the air like a thin curtain, glowing faintly in the evening light. Kara and Rain stood in the center of the quiet storm. Their bodies bruised, their breaths sharp. The herd slowly returned to them, forming a protective circle. Their silver fur shimmered like moonlight over steel. It was a strange sight, a warrior and a human defended by creatures older than both their worlds. Kara pressed her hand to her wounded arm, feeling the warm blood beneath cracked armor. She glanced at Rain, who leaned slightly but refused to fall. His shoulder was bleeding and deep bruises darkened his skin. Yet his face remained calm, almost peaceful. It unsettled her more than the hunters ever had. "You should rest," Kara said. Rain shook his head slowly. "If I rest now, I will not rise quickly," he replied. Kara frowned. "Then why do you refuse rest?" she asked. Rain looked at the horizon where the last sunlight touched the red stones. "Because they will return," he said. His voice was certain, quiet, and heavy with knowledge. Kara narrowed her eyes. "You speak as if you know how hunters think." Rain did not answer at once. Instead, he knelt beside the smallest herd creature. Examining a cut on its leg, his gentle touch made the creature relax. Lowering its long neck, only then did Reynolds speak. I know how desperate men behave, he said. Hunters are not very different. Kara stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. You hide too much, she said. Rain gave a small smile, but it held sadness. I do not hide, he replied. I just do not share things that bring pain. Kara's chest tightened. Pain was something her people respected. It shaped warriors. It forged honor. But this human spoke of pain like it was a memory he carried alone. She crouched down beside him. Tell me, she said. What shaped you? Rain paused, his hand resting on the creature's wounded leg. The wind moved softly through the plains. As if waiting too, after a long silence, he gave a slow answer. I learned to fight because I had to, he said. I learned to survive because no one else could. And I learned to endure because there was no other choice. Kara felt her throat tighten with something unfamiliar. She realized she was not speaking to a simple traveler. This human carried scars she could not see. Your people, she said softly. Were they warriors? Rain inhaled. Then exhaled slowly. No, he said. But the world made them fight anyway. She saw the truth in his eyes-old battles. Long nights, silent grief, not the glory of combat, but the heavy cost of surviving it. For a moment, the strong warrior of the plains felt small beside him. Kara sat fully on the ground, letting her guard down for the first time. The water you drank, she said, it tests spirit, not strength. Only those with deep courage can hold it without losing their mind. You should have failed. Rain looked at her calmly. Then maybe I have more fear than I thought, he replied. Fear keeps courage alive. Kara blinked, surprised by the wisdom in his words. In her culture, courage was everything. But she had never heard it described with such simple truth. She reached into her belt and pulled out a small stone charm. It glowed faint blue, carved with ancient symbols. Her tribe carried these charms from birth to death. They were marks of honor and lineage. She held it out to Rain. This belonged to my sister, she said. She died protecting the herd. Rain's eyes softened. I cannot take that, he said gently. Kara pushed it toward him. You earned it, she said. You fought beside me. You bled beside me, and you did it without knowing my people. My world or my purpose. Rain stared at the charm. His hand shook slightly as he took it. A deep silence fell between them. The kind of silence that binds two lives together. But the moment broke when the ground trembled softly. Kara stood instantly, her warrior instincts returning. Rain followed, blade in hand, though his body swayed from exhaustion. They looked toward the dark edge of the plains. Far away, new lights flickered cold, mechanical, spreading across the horizon like crawling stars. More hunters, or something worse. Approaching slowly and deliberately, Kara gripped her spear, feeling strength return through anger and duty. Rain wrapped the charm around his wrist, tightening it with quiet resolve. Neither spoke. Words were not needed now. For the first time, they stood not as strangers. Not as allies of chance, but as warriors bound by a shared danger and a deepening trust. And as the night rose over the battlefield, both understood that the true test had only just begun. Night settled over the burning plains like a dark blanket. The heat faded, but the tension grew heavier with every passing breath. Kara and Rain stood side by side as the distant lights crawled closer across the horizon. At first, they were faint, like fireflies in the far distance. But soon the lights formed long lines, moving with cold, mechanical purpose. These are not the same hunters, Kara whispered. Rain nodded slowly. No, he said. These are stronger. The herd pressed tighter behind them. Sensing danger in the trembling earth, Kara could hear the rhythm of engines. Deeper and heavier than before, the sound vibrated through the ground, shaking the stones beneath their feet. Rain glanced at her, his expression calm but focused. We cannot fight a full force in the open, he said. You know this land, Kara? Looked around the plains. Her eyes scanning the dark shapes of rocks and distant cliffs. Her people had lived here for centuries. She knew every canyon, every ridge, every hidden path. But she had never planned a defense with someone like Rain beside her. Someone who made danger feel strangely manageable. There is a canyon, she said, pointing toward the east, not far. Maybe 1 hour. It is narrow with high walls, if we guide the herd through it. The hunters cannot surround us. Rain studied the direction quietly. How many entrances, he asked. 1 main entrance, she said. But 2 smaller gaps near the back. They are too small for machines. Rain nodded again. That means we can control where the hunters enter, he said. And we can trap them inside. Kara blinked. Surprised, how would we trap them? She asked. Rain pointed to the canyon walls, though they could not see them clearly from here. Stone breaks when pushed the right way, he said. Even big stone. Kara stared at him. Most humans she had met struggled to lift a spear. This one talked about breaking canyons. He was either brave or foolish. She still could not decide which. But the lights on the horizon grew brighter. There was no more time for doubt. We move now, she said sharply. Rain nodded once. Together they guided the herd forward. The silver creatures moved in a tight group, following Kara's calm voice and Rain's steady gestures. Their hooves created a soft thunder in the night. Rain walked on the side closest to danger, even though his wounds ached with every step. Kara noticed this, and a warm, uncomfortable feeling grew in her chest. You risk too much, she said. Rain gave a small smile. So do you, he replied. The moon rose higher, lighting the path with pale blue light in the distance. The canyon's entrance slowly came into view. Tall stone walls stretched upward like giant guardians. A narrow path cut through the rock, deep and shadowed. It was the perfect place for defense. But before they reached it, the rumbling behind them grew louder. Kara turned and saw the new hunter force spreading across the plains. Dozens of machines, heavier than before, armed with bright lamps and spinning weapons. They moved with discipline, not recklessness. This group was organized, intelligent, and deadly. Rain saw them too. They know we are moving, he said. They will try to push us away from the canyon. Kara nodded. Then we must reach it first. They hurried the herd forward, but the machines accelerated. The sound of engines tore through the night like ripping metal. Kara's heart pounded. Rain looked at the canyon entrance and measured the distance. We can make it, he said softly. Stay with the herd. Kara frowned. And what will you do? She asked. Rain tightened the stone charm on his wrist. By time, he answered before she could stop him. He ran toward the approaching machines. Kara shouted his name, but he did not stop. The moonlight reflected off his blade as he sprinted across the open plains alone. The machines slowed, surprised by the lone human charging at them. A few hunters stepped out, aiming their weapons. But Rain did not hesitate. He bent low, grabbed a handful of sand, and threw it into the air with a sharp twist. The wind caught the sand and blew it into the hunters' eyes. They staggered, blinded for a moment. Rain used that moment to slice a fuel line on the nearest machine. It sparked, then burst into a small explosion. The blast lit the night and forced the hunter force to reform their lines. Kara stared in disbelief. This human was creating chaos again. Not with strength, but with strange, clever moves. She shouted to the herd and pushed them into the canyon. They rushed inside, hooves echoing against the stone. Rain retreated backward toward her, dodging shots and swinging weapons. When he finally crossed into the canyon entrance, he stumbled from exhaustion. Kara grabbed his arm and pulled him behind the rocks. You are insane, she growled. Rain smiled weakly. You already knew that, he whispered. Behind them, The hunters approached fast. Their machines roared like beasts. The canyon walls waited silently, tall and heavy. Rain placed his hand against the stone. "Testing its strength, we can end this here," he said. Kara watched him and felt her heart beat with a mix of fear and trust. The final stand had begun. The canyon walls rose high around Rain and Kara, like ancient giants. The night sky was a thin ribbon above them, glowing faintly with cold stars. Behind them, the herd waited quietly, trusting the pair who had saved them again and again. But ahead, the hunter machines roared closer, their light slicing through the shadows like blades. Rain leaned against the stone. Breathing hard, his wounds throbbed, but his mind stayed sharp. Kara stood guard beside him, spear raised. Her body trembling with pain, yet refusing to fall. Their shadows merged in the moonlight. Two warriors from different worlds standing as one. "They will enter soon," Kara said. Rain nodded. "We let them come," he replied. "Then we bring the canyon down." Kara stared at him. "To break the stone, we must strike the right points," she warned. "And we must buy enough time." Rain touched the charm around his wrist and smiled gently. "Then we buy it," he said. The first hunter machine entered the canyon, its engine echoing off the walls. The sound grew louder, bouncing around them until it felt like thunder trapped in a cage. Behind it came another, then another, pushing deeper inside with slow confidence. The hunters believed they were driving prey into a corner, but they were walking into a trap they could not see. Rain stepped forward despite Kara's worried look. He pointed to a tall pillar of rock on the canyon wall. "That is the weak point," he said. "If we break it, the wall will fold and block the entrance." Kara nodded, understanding the plan instantly. "But we must hold them until they reach the right place," she said. Rain tightened his grip on his blade. "We hold," he said. The first group of hunters approached on foot. Moving fast between the machines, their weapons glowed with blue energy, lighting their skull-shaped masks from beneath. One hunter shouted, "There they are!" They charged, filling the canyon with angry footfalls. Rain and Kara braced themselves. Kara swung her spear in a powerful arc. Knocking two hunters aside, Rain moved beside her, striking joints and weak points with precise blows. Together they fought like a storm of speed and strength. Dust rose around their feet, turning the canyon floor into a swirling battlefield. A hunter grabbed Rain by the shoulder, digging claws into his wound. Rain gritted his teeth and twisted free. He slammed his blade against the hunter's mask. Cracking it open, the hunter fell with a heavy thud. Kara roared, pushing her body beyond its limits. Her spear moved like lightning, each strike sending sparks into the night, but more hunters poured in, filling the canyon like water flooding a narrow passage. Rain looked at the weak point on the wall. "They were close, very close, Kara," he shouted. "Now?" Kara nodded and threw her spear with all her remaining strength. The weapon cut through the air and struck the stone pillar on the wall. A deep crack echoed through the canyon. But the wall did not fall yet. Rain sprinted toward the same pillar, ignoring the hunters behind him, ignoring the pain in his body. He slammed his shoulder into the cracked stone. A shock ran through him. But the stone shifted, still not enough. Kara saw him struggle and felt a surge of fierce resolve. She charged forward despite her wound. Another spear from her belt flew from her hand and struck the pillar again. A second crack boomed across the canyon. The wall shuddered. Pebbles rained down from above. Then a massive rumble shook the entire canyon floor. The hunters froze. Their machines screeched to a halt. Rain stepped back just as the pillar split in two. A huge slab of stone broke away from the wall and collapsed downward. Dust exploded like a storm, filling the canyon with a roaring cloud. The hunters nearest the entrance were crushed instantly. The machines were trapped behind the fallen stone. Unable to move forward, the canyon entrance sealed completely. Silence followed, heavy, final, absolute. Kara fell to her knees, breathing hard. Rain sank down beside her. Exhausted but alive, they were bruised, bloodied, and barely standing, but they had won. Kara looked at Rain, her eyes glowing softly in the moonlit dust. "You fought like one of us," she said, "brave, stubborn, and full of fire." Rain smiled faintly. "Suit yourself," he whispered. "I only did what was needed." Kara reached into her armor and withdrew a glowing mark of honor. A warrior's seal carved from ancient stone. She placed it before him with both hands. "A gesture of highest respect, Rain of Earth," she said. "You are now a warrior of my people." Rain hesitated, then accepted the mark. The canyon wind brushed past them like a blessing. The herd gathered behind them, safe at last. A new dawn crept slowly across the sky. Soft light touched the stone and the tired warriors who had survived the impossible. And in that rising light, their bond was sealed not by blood, but by courage, sacrifice, and a trust strong enough to shape legends.